youngest, the hockey player, is graduating this year, and one of the things that we've done for the kids every time they've graduated is they get to take a trip of their own choosing.
Mm.
And he's got quite the impressive 7-day golf event that he and I and his brother to go on.
Oh wow, where?
Um, Mostly Michigan, but then we're gonna cross over and do Whistling Straits in Wisconsin. So we'll do
Oh.
Arcadia Bluffs, Gray Walls. I like so we go up and around in the UP,
Right.
and then come down and around the other side.
And go up to
Bay Harbor.
Up to Wisconsin to Whistling. Wow.
Yeah,
I was there years ago for the PGA,
yeah.
and links golf is my favorite type of golf.
Then you would really the next time I can get you back to Michigan, we'll have you stick around, and we'll go up and we'll play Arcadia Bluffs because they're literally on the longitude. They're this exact same spot, just one's on one side of the lake and the other is on the other.
Oh,
And they're both links courses.
wow. So here's the trivia. Why are they called links courses?
Oh, I don't know.
So this is good for your upcoming trip in May or June or whatever. It is called. They're called links courses because when golf was first developed, they were seaside courses, and they were typically placed between the railroad tracks and the beach.
Uh-huh.
And that is the area that links the land to the sea.
Ah.
Think of the area that's between, a narrow strip, right? It is dune-like, rolling typically.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why when you go to Scotland and Ireland, have you played golf in Scotland and Ireland at all?
Not yet.
When you get a chance, literally a lot of the courses, it is like St. Andrews. It is you go out 9 and then you come back.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's literally just this, and that's why it's that area that links the land to the sea.
Okay, so those are the kinds of things that you're going to be doing for me for the series. Literally, like that is 100. When I told my, I hired a videographer who's going to do all of this for me. I cannot do it. I don't have the time to do it, and I'm trying to sell $1 million worth of stuff this year. So,
good, wow,
yeah. So, I need to devote time to the sales effort here, and when I told him about your segment, he literally was like, "Oh my God, that is so perfect."
Useless trivia and stories.
Yes. So there's a whole episode of the series that's dedicated to Band Together. So one of your useless fact is going to be about your home area. So be thinking about what it is that you want to say about, hey, oh my God, you're coming to Raleigh, Durham. Oh my God, let me tell you about this, right? Like upstate New York. So I want you to be thinking about that. Upstate. Sure. And then this is the trip of trips. We did Dallas by way of Memphis. Dallas to Taos, New Mexico, to Durango, Colorado, then to Ogden, Utah, and then back home.
Wow, that's mileage right there.
5,000 miles we did. Yeah. Yeah.
Man, how many was that? A couple weeks or?
Well, that story in and of itself, which is funny, I'm recording because now we can use this. I can throw it into the Parktopia stuff. So, long story short, she was supposed to come home with me on January 3rd. I had to go to Vegas for Expo. So we were coming home so I could fly to Vegas. Then Kara and I had a event in Salt Lake City between the trip home from Vegas. And she goes, well, screw that. I'm staying here. and I'll just wait for you to come back to Salt Lake City.
Come back
Well,
to Salt Lake. I
I
love it.
fly home, I land, open up my phone to her telling me that she tested positive for COVID.
Oh no.
So, sure enough, positive, can't go to Vegas. No wife, no dogs, no food because we'd been gone.
Wow.
Our daughter-in-law is 8 3/4 months pregnant, and she gave Lauren COVID.
Oh no.
Yep. So it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. Yeah. So, our guy at Drifter who did the conversions for us, he too is doing a YouTube channel, and we always joke about, content, and he keeps saying to me, he's like, "You have to have conflict in your content because that's what sells."
Right.
And everything in our content has all been shit that's gone wrong.
No there's a good saying, no conflict, no story.
Yeah, it literally like there's been no shortage of like, okay, well, we ran the batteries to 0 one time. That was good. All right. Anyway, we gotta talk about black. So,
All right, you tee it up.
all right. So here you are again. I like, my are books like tattoos for you yet? Like, do you get the itch? Are you like, "Oh my god, it's been too long. I need another book." Like, how does that process work out for you at what? This is number 17?
This is number 17. It's a little bit full circle because the first 3 I wrote on my own, and then every one since, you included, I've had a co-author.
Yep.
And I decided to do Black as kind of a culmination of what I've learned now from studying now over 5,000 case studies
Yep.
and 16 books and specifically 10 different colors.
Right.
So I'm not sure tattoos, but I see the analogy, and I don't know when my next book will be. I'm gonna
Oh.
probably sit on it for a little bit.
All right. Well, and there's reason for it, right? Like the arc of the series became sort of a part of the narrative along the way, right? And that's not easy to accomplish as an author because most of the time you exhaust the topic
Right.
long before you get to the canon that you've created. So talk about that evolution. Like this, there's been kind of a tail to this thing along the way to help you arrive at black. So talk about like how that's all wound itself out.
Yeah. So the quick backstory is you go back 12 years ago, and I was working as a number 2 at an experiential marketing agency. And we were doing kind of these larger than life crazy activations. And it was all about distracting people, trying to earn media. Um, and I just saw that I thought marketing should be going in a different direction,
Mhm.
but I didn't know which direction. So I spent about a year writing, and I had this like moment of truth, and it led me to starting a project that I called the Purple Goldfish Project. And the idea was to find 1,001 examples of companies that did little things
Mhm.
to kind of elevate the experience. And I don't know what I was thinking when I picked 1,001. That was stupid. Um, and it took me over 2 years. I was still working in that role at Synergy, kind of heading up our creative and business development. And I always knew that the goal was to write a book at the end of the arc of that. So 2012, I mean, 10 years ago, almost to the day, Purple came out.
Wow.
And I thought, all right, I always wanted to write a book. I think it's a lot, about 80% of people say they've got a book in them. And I thought maybe that's it. But what intrigued me is what I learned by going through 1,000 examples, because Roger, the companies that really got this principle of a purple goldfish, kind of what I would call marketing lanyard, right? A little something extra. what was amazing, they got it even more so, the ones that were really great, they got it more so for the employees than they did the customer.
Right.
And that led me to green. And green was great. Green was, looking at 1,001 examples again of, and it was a little easier because you could have multiple examples from a company, but it was the little things that you did to drive the engagement with your employees and reinforce your culture. Beyond, and green was a little bit beyond compensation.
Right. Right.
And so I did that, and then the revelation that came during that was that what I've learned is very quickly, I used to think you treated all your customers and all your employees the same. Like I'm a fairness guy, right? That just seems fair to me. And what I learned really quickly is that all customers and all employees are not created equal. Right? Your top 20% of customers and your top 20% of your sales team are not like everyone else, right? Typically, for a business, 80% of profitability may not be 80% of sales, but 80% of profitability comes from your top 20% of customers. 80% of your sales are typically driven by your top 20% of salespeople, right? And so golden, I smartened up. I only did 200 examples for golden. But golden was the idea of how do you do the same principle, but how do you do the little things for your best, what we call your vital few. And so that came out, and that was like the trilogy. I wrote them all myself, and I went, all right, I think that's pretty good that I've done a trilogy. And then in 2014, I began working with IBM as what they call a futurist, which is a very kind way of saying influencer, right? But what I started to see the role that technology, data, and analytics were going to play in being able to deliver that great experience. So for this, the first time because technology is not my background, and UX isn't my background, I partnered with Evan Carroll, who you know well, and we did Blue Goldfish. And Blue was literally all about this idea of, how do I leverage what I know, and how do I get to know my customer better so I can deliver a more personalized experience. And then very quickly that led to me doing red. I started to see the thread of how important purpose was in some of the other books in the series. So red jumped into it with Graham Newell, and that's near and dear to both of our hearts because we did promo edition.
Yeah, it's great.
And then I hooked up with Dave Rendell, and we did Pink, which we've now done Pink 2.0 as one of the most recent books. And Pink was really back to my heart as a marketer. And I went from Pink, and I'm going to go really quickly, Yellow, which focused on happiness, which is kind of a very lofty goal. But if you think about it, at the end of the day, you want happy customers, you want happy employees, and hopefully purpose-wise, you're giving back to society and making life in our world a little bit happier. And then, from there I did Gray, which was kind of leadership oriented around the generations, like leading across. Now we have 5 generations in the workplace, which is so key. And then the last 2, which is my first sales book, was Diamond. And Diamond was great. It was all about how do you thrive under pressure. And then I did Silver, which was all about kind of communication and how do you become more effective in terms of presenting. So very important from a sales perspective. But I really felt like, to kind of come back, I really wanted to try to put a framework around the whole effort. And that's where black comes in. Black is, you get the color black when you combine all of the other colors together.
For me, it's sort of I'm reminded of Forrest Gump, the movie, when he was running, right?
Mm,
And everyone was trying to like follow along and make sense of why he had made the choice to do what he was doing. And then he just decided, I'm done. And for many people, like I think like for me, for you, it's kind of like going to the top of the mountain and finding the Buddha and saying, what does it all mean?
right,
What is it like? Okay, so I did all that and it was a journey
right,
and we learned a lot of stuff along the way. Those of us who consumed what you created, it really was. It was like every time you'd bring a new book out, it was like, oh, wow, there's a new layer to the onion that,
right.
gosh, I hadn't considered. But man, yeah, no, that makes sense. All right. Yeah, well, we definitely are adding that one. But then you get to the end and you're like, okay, like this has changed since you started. Things have changed enormously since you
Yeah,
started
it
the
it
book.
it, it has, and I'm going to share really really quickly what I call the the black matrix.
Okay.
So I'm a big fan of kind of frameworks. I'm a
Yeah.
visual thinker. And so what's challenging about this book, it really had me think, like, if you were going to start out, where would you start and how does the progression go?
Right.
So we've created a 3 by 3 matrix, which is not easy. But I'm super excited about it. It's also, which is kind of cool, the first time I've done a hardcover.
Hmm.
So that's kind of a new thing, and I'm not going to do an ebook for this. I'm going to practice a little pink goldfish of
Ah,
withholding. It's just going to
withholding.
be the hardcover. Um, I want to keep it kind of special and unique. Yeah.
It's awesome. So talk about in the previous slide, you hide those two little letters that you have put together in the parentheses, this DX. So when we talk about evolution, and if we're in the kitchen and we just put red and blue and purple and golden and we put them all in there, what is the significance of those two little letters? What does that mean?
So DX stands for differentiated experience. And I think it's very difficult now to just think about, customers in a silo or employees in a silo or even your brand in a silo. I think today we need to kind of think collectively about how are we creating that differentiated experience that our employees deliver, that our customers absolutely love and talk about, and how do we stand out collectively in the marketplace? So one of the things I'm really excited about from Black is I've created kind of a manifesto, and the manifesto kind of goes like this: your brand is no longer just what you tell people it is; it's the differentiated experience that your employees deliver. It's what you stand for and how your customers feel. And most importantly, your brand is what your customers and employees tell others about their experience. All else is derivative of this and only this. So I've tried to kind of take the whole, what I've learned from the 10 things and try to put it together.
Hmm.
Um, and again, I think, we throw around the word brand too much. Um, And if we're honest, branding is probably best left for cattle. Your logo is not your brand, right? What you go and you put on your website is not your brand. It's kind of like culture, right? It's what happens when you're not in the room.
Right.
It's what gets said about you. So that was kind of the big kind of aha coming out of this.
Knowing you the way I do and knowing how you are just so nerdy about data and research and doing the work and making sure that there's reference material available for the skeptic who wants to somehow drag this concept out on the carpet and examine it. Were there were there a couple noteworthy ones that stand out that kind of reinforce a little bit about what the reader of the book might get if they were to pick it up?
Reframe that for me. I mean, when you talk kind of
Well, for instance, Red was, all purpose driven, and you had great examples. And we, even in our research, were able to find some really neat examples of businesses who were living the ethos of the things that we were communicating in the book.
right.
Have any noteworthy stories out of Black that you might want to share?
One of the things that I didn't do with the book, but it's been suggested to me, and I may write about it, is to look at organizations that are almost like Black Hall of Famers.
Right, right.
So they're amazing from a brand perspective. They do great things for their customers. They've got a super strong culture and purpose.
Yeah,
Their employees are ultra engaged and bought in. I think there's some good stories out there. Um, but what I wanted also to, sometimes we can get fixated on the ones that we all hear about.
sure.
And it's like you can get discouraged really quickly because I'm never going to be X and I may never be Y.
Yeah,
Um, but what I like again about the matrix and the progression of the book is, hey, start with purple, green, and gold.
right.
Small things that you can do. We're not talking about heavy lifts, right? And then the next level up. So that's all about what I call value and maintenance in that
Okay.
bottom left. And then the next level and the next three boxes are warmth and competence. And so that's from a competence perspective, that's blue. So how do I, even it could be very basic on how you leverage the data that you have about your customers to deliver that better experience. The warmth bit is red.
Sure.
So it's tapping into your intent and your reason for being, and doing things to bring that to life. And then it's also kind of a mix of that is also pink at that level is how do you reinforce and stand out and be different by tapping into both the warmth and the competence. How do you don't have to be great at everything, but be great at the things that your customers value the most.
Yeah.
Um,
And focus your activities on strengthening your strengths.
yeah, absolutely, right. And realize that every weakness that you have also has a corresponding strength to it,
Right.
right? So don't be afraid of your flaws because that might be hiding your actually biggest advantages. And then kind of that top level um, is we talk about the concept of really getting to that top level of both progress, so like beyond competence, like how do you actually get to progress so you're a vital part of your customers and your employees' lives. And then there's connection, which we think is actually above warmth, which is kind of that deeper level where you're connecting with your customers and your employees, very much purpose based. And up there is things like happiness,
Mm.
it's communication, it's how do you lead across the generations, how do you manage yourself and your prospects and clients under pressure. And that kind of leads to that way top right is where kind of it all comes together with Black.
As I'm listening, as someone who is a little more versed in the series than maybe the listeners are, it's almost like listening to you describe Maslow's hierarchy. Like,
Yeah, right.
you're
And really quickly, this is kind of, if you look over to the right here, That's the matrix.
Yep.
And again, the goal is to kind of get up to level up to that top right if you can, you know.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, absolutely. Green was based totally on, foundation here, right? If you flipped it a little bit, strong foundation, and then you focus over here, and then ultimately at the top of the pyramid is kind of the where it all comes together.
Well, and a lot of times when I interview authors and I get feedback from my listeners, they're always sort of like, That's so intellectualized. I don't know how to start." Like, sounds great in theory, kind of like reaction, right? And so now what you've really done is you've taken the entirety of your series of work and said, like, okay, well, if you want to get started, start here.
Right.
Once you've gotten that in place, then jump to these. And then once you finally got into that, then, come on up here and enjoy the party because life will be grand. And it kind of gives a roadmap for someone who comes into contact with your content to use to help guide them in this process instead of just like, well, I picked up yellow, but that really wasn't at all what I should have been trying to read about at that point. So it's really smart that you've been able to then, like, it's almost like when the Beatles brought the box set out after all of those years. Like, you just, let's bring it all out. Let's look at
Right.
it again
Right.
and let's make some new conclusions, right?
Yeah, and what I like is, again, if I took the collective amount of words that I've written through the 10 series, I mean, you're probably average about 40,000. So you're talking about like a half a million words. What I've done is try to condense each of the essential elements of the books down to a very basic, Reader's Digest type of, Twitter version of the book.
Right.
And so if somebody sees that and they're like, oh, this is where we need to start, then it's all right, maybe I'll get purple 2.0 or green 2.0 or golden goldfish or pink 2.0, and go deeper.
Yep, for sure. And to me, if this is the end, Stan, what best way for you to sort of put a ribbon on this package that is the Goldfish series and say, I leave you with this. It happens to also be in a nice hardcover format. So
Right.
it's kind of like I don't know, Kobe walking off the court at the end, drop the mic, right? Yeah, like, great. That's awesome. How are you going on the road to present? Like, what can we expect from Stan post release?
Yeah. So good question. So what's kind of cool is on the 22nd. So on the 22nd, which we're calling, I love this, Tuesday, TWOS day, because it is going to be February 22nd of the 22nd year of the second millennia, right? I mean, you can keep going. Second,
Crazy.
if I really was courageous, I would have done we're going to do it noon Eastern, right, to make it convenient for both Europe and the West Coast. But if I went all in, I should have started it at 2:22, right? But I've got a program that afternoon, so I've got unfortunately booked for that. But yeah, so super excited. I'm going to get out and launch it. What's great is like the following week, I'm going to be out in Arizona presenting, and we'll have it out there. And then what's neat is in person is coming back, which is great. And I think I've gotten really good at the virtual medium. I don't think it'll ever replace in person,
Agreed.
but virtual live is, I think, going to be here to stay.
Yeah. And for the listener who has not yet done so, there is a whole episode of the So You're in Sales podcast with Mr. Phelps and I talking about how to arrange yourself to be a better virtual presenter. So if you've not yet gone and listened to that episode, by all means, rewind the tape, go find that episode because there was a lot of quality. And as you may have been witness to Stan today, doing some of the video magicry that he has available to him from the setup that he's got there is just proof that, when you want to look better than me, you do what Stan's done and you spend some money on it. There you go. And you make it look great. All right. So kind of concludes the audio only portion of the interview. So Stan, thank you so much for coming on the program to talk about that stuff. That's super cool. Bonus content. We released the video version of this interview on the opposite Wednesday. And I cut little pieces out of the thing so that like you got to watch the video piece to get the whole interview. And secondarily, and if you need time to think about this, we can edit this right so that you have time to think about it, but you get to ask me a question.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So if you need to like ruminate on that for a moment before we come, or if you got it, you got it. Great.
Make it a selfish one right now.
You can, whatever you want, man. This is bonus content section.
So Roger, I feel like you've obviously as a co-author, and we met probably 7 years ago. I think it may be one of the first high fives, right?
Yeah.
Through Danny. You've been there. You've consumed most, if not all, of the colors. Which one resonated with you the most? If I can be selfish to ask you that question, and why?
Well, that's not fair. Of course, it's red. I mean, the way I tell the story about you and I and how we came to co-author Red Promo is, so Danny and I do the promo cares thing. That's how Danny and I were already like buds. Danny's friends with the whole world anyway. Makes everybody feel like they're his best friend. But it's just because he's an amazing dude. And I don't know if you know this, but when I returned to the promotional marketing industry, I went to a supplier and we had no marketing budget at all. Not zero for the promotional products division. But my sales responsibility was so I had a quota, but no budget. Perfect, right?
Right. Wow.
That's a lot of fun. So I was lamenting to Danny. I said, like, how on earth am I going to have any success when I don't have any means by which to broadcast my message? And he said, hey, quick, which supplier in the industry does the most good for the world? And we kind of, and we got answer 1 was relatively easy, but answer 2 and 3 was extraordinarily difficult to come up with. So he said to me, well, why don't you just make being a great company, really, being a good company for the world, make that your marketing budget.
Wow.
And people will gravitate to you by virtue of what you're doing because other people like him believe in messages like that and gravitate towards them as consumers.
Right.
So that literal back and forth between he and I was the genesis of Promo Cares.
Wow.
Like, that's how it all started. And once I told him that I was willing to put in the work to bring what became Promo Cares to life, Social Good Promotions got started because of that.
Right. That's the genesis. Wow.
Okay. So you're watching what we're doing, and I had the chance to meet you. And as a good salesperson, as you are, Stan, you sent me a signed copy of Red.
Right.
And said, hey, I really like what you're doing. I thought this book would be appropriate for you. And when I read it, my jaw hit the floor as I was consuming it because I'd already read Purple. So I knew what your jam was. Like I knew what your gig was all about, but I hadn't taken the additional step to consume some of the other colors in the repertoire at that point. So when you sent me literally, it felt like it got sent to me for a reason.
Wow.
Right. So fast forward to you coming back to me after we'd done Promo Cares for a while at the Band Together event and saying like, you think there's a book there? And I literally could not like even fathom the fact that you were saying to me like, hey, if you're willing to do the work, I think there's a book here, but you got to do the work. And it was like, oh my God, my whole life I've wanted to write a book. And you made it so incredibly easy for me to do because the framework was there. All I had to really do was paint my numbers, thanks to Stan, and be willing to be introspective and be willing to do the work. Right. And much like Promo Cares, which just like the book, if you don't believe in what you're doing, that book never happens.
Right.
Because you gotta like you Stan as the trainer in this exercise puts me as the person. It's hard.
Right.
And getting through it is an accomplishment unto itself. But when you're doing the research and you don't know for sure that there's going to be something that can be a book in the end of the research is like, that's why a lot of people I think don't do it, because it's like, well, shit, like I did all of these hours and hours and hours of work and I can't come up with anything that makes any sense. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Right. So, but bonus content. I
Bonus.
love Diamond. I loved Diamond Goldfish because there's a lot of research done around the psychology of sales, and Diamond takes things to a level that most other books about that topic leave out, which
Mm,
is we are who we are until the shit goes wrong, and then we're somebody different. And it's really who we are when the shit goes wrong that you and I need to know about so that we can deal with it when it happens.
right.
And the fact that we don't really most of the time have a good handle on who we even are in our stasis mode is only further exacerbated when shit just got real and oh my God, Karen has gone nuts and I don't know what to do
Right.
because I've never seen her behave this way before. So I yeah, to me,
Well,
like
good.
I find myself actually going back to Diamond and kind of referring to it on occasion when I'm in situations like that. So bonus Diamond. There you go.
Awesome. 50-50. I love it. Well, congrats to you. You know that I always like to share this stat with people. They ask people, do you have a book in you? And 80% of people say, yep, I think at some point in my life, I think I could write a book. Less than 1% get it done.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then the other thing that I'm really gratified by is you probably know that you know a statistic because you would, but I don't. But I'm fathoming the fact that the 47 reviews I've gotten of that book on Amazon are better than your average author's review count on Amazon, right? So I'm
Absolutely.
I'm super proud of the fact that not only did we write it, but clearly, and that was not me begging people for reviews. That was genuine reaction from the people who have consumed what we created who said, this is super valuable. And to see that at scale, like it's not massive scale, but it's not
Right.
nothing.
No, yeah,
To see
absolutely.
that
But
to me
by
is,
far the best in terms of takedown, in
yeah.
terms of all the industry specifics, it has performed better than any other. And in fact, better than many of the other colors in the book in terms of feedback and reviews. So